Good evening, folks. This is Lila with some bedtime stories that I'd like to share with you. With me is Dean Val and our dear friend Tim von Pinnon. And I'll be reading from the book 6, Your Dream Visions by Dwayne, the great writer. We will discuss the chapter and ask you folks to please ask any questions about the reading. So please do, feel free to do that. So I'll begin on chapter 6. In one of Paul Twitchell's books, he specifies how very few have ever been to the true reality, except for the real guides. Those who follow the gods of man and their spiritual paths have never come close, even Durwood and Gerald, whom many look to as headmasters and did not succeed by what they were doing. That now proves everything. Only those who have seen the true reality will stay straightforward with it, because it is exceptional, and nothing in all of life compares to it, as it is all life. Those who have seen the all is and established themselves with it have become the real universal guides. As Paul stated, not all the real you guides took on what he termed as the rod of power, which is now the new wave. Because this world is based upon darkness and not real light, but secondary light, there becomes an identified agitation within those who have unseen scales upon their inner bodies that ruffle their feathers, so to speak. Then the real light comes into their awareness. This is why anyone who has tried to bring about even the smallest amount of truth to this world has been destroyed. The masses, because of their treacherous upbringing and introduction, which has been beaten into them over lifetimes, fear for their lives from their taskmasters, who watch over them with vigilance. If one does not follow the dictates of the rep systems and how they have determined things to be, and then those who follow them will first psychologically be tortured. And if the extreme is needed, they will simply disappear, as did so many of the popes of the saints past. Those who have chosen to belong to such gatherings as the mafia and other credit and secret cults, which are unknown to most of the public, will find it hard to leave such cruel environments, as they were enforced to join and look to be so right at the time. The great reality is not concerned about the choices a person makes. Its only interest is the true completeness of the individual awareness with itself. The all is does not throw lightning bolts to the earth as does the gods of man. Most people are so used to the old rhetoric and mannerisms that they have worshipped deities, that they have ignited psychosis in them from day one and days gone by. I am not here to point a finger, but to help sort out all the injustice to the person's awareness that is not necessary. And so this simply means to learn to become more aware, and the real you will eventually rise to the great heights of the real universes beyond all darkness. An interesting aspect that must be looked at is when Paul called the shadow and what I would term to be the influence of sorts. It is part of the moral upbringing and collection of agreements brought about by social conditioning, which is, of course, a distortion from real truth. There are so many sides to this created influence, and as real truth, one makes an in-depth study of their life with the real guidance. They will come to see so much more. The moralistic shadow challenges the personality within oneself. It is a shadowy character that has been created by each person, but for the most part, it is not altogether recognized and confronted, as it has so many different disguises and paths it leads itself along. It is what would be termed as the good and the bad or evil in one. Also, duality of nature, as in the term of the dualistic powers. It takes a lot of study to recognize all the different positions that are possible, because each of us can create whatever we want to and agree that it is real to us. Another aspect that is hard for so many to recognize is their allegiance to their literal sense, and it is something so much more important than their real awareness. The real you is far too vast and unconfined for the earthly educational system to deal with. So they keep most people at a very low level of understanding and control. It is a true negative adaptation and side of a person that can be ruled by the third head of the Kaloum god, the influence. Most people are hooked up with the influence in a matter of various degrees of involvement. Most of society wants to do the right thing with their life and also with others, but they will have their own associated with the influence, some more than others. When I took the rod of power in 2001, the first thing the boys did was introduce me to the influence head on. I had met my own shadowy self many times in former years, but had not recognized the full potential of this creature until my awareness has broadened with all my new experiences of her. She is now shown to me in her true color, so I could better understand what I was to do here and what she had already been doing. She had already devoured Gerwood and Gerald and was totally lodged in Crone, as she was the principle behind everything. Now, as I become more familiar with how the influence worked, I better understood my new presentation in this world. Does either of you have any comments so far?
Yes, it's interesting. I've listened to this before, but this is the first time I've heard this part that Dwayne says that he met his own shadow, his own influence. I never caught that before. I thought it was just the influence was like generic, the influence, the composite of different, all the different desires that people have. But here he says, I caught this is my shadow, my influence. So it's interesting to consider how that is. Also, we talked about free will, and Dwayne's mentioned before, free will is a bitch, because we can create anything we want, just like Lila read. So here we go, happy-go-lucky. We just, in creation, we can create anything we want, but better is if we're just focused on the isness. That way our creations are along those lines too, and they benefit us instead of sidetracking us into more lifetimes and more detours, so to speak. But it's going back to the shadow. That's kind of interesting to me. Is that we each, in a way, consider that too. That's our own shadow. It's not the collective, but it could be just our own shadow or the own influence that we have created. And at the same time, we have to manage or deal with. Basically, it's dealing with it and managing it, just like we do with the creation world here and all that's we have to face within it. Maybe Tim, I'm sure you have something too.
Yeah. It was interesting how Dwayne states that very few have been to the all-is except the universal guides. And that how the guides here on Earth, even if someone was bringing out the smallest amount of light or truth, that they were destroyed. It's no wonder that more hasn't been revealed for us to how's it stated? They're here to help us complete ourselves. And there's forces that are trying to prevent us from becoming more aware or have in the past. Yeah, the influence, it's really interesting how it was stated too about it's created by each of us, this shadowy influence, and how it's like our moral upbringing, and well, there's so many sides to it, and how we need to study all the positions.
Yeah, and since the influence is just in creation, then we recreated it basically in a manner speaking. So it's something to consider and deal with basically, because it's always going to be around. As long as we're in creation, it's always going to be around here because it's just part of creation. And how creation is, how it works. In the real universes, it doesn't relate to the isness. But that's cool too, that it can't perceive the real universes. That's why we're safe there, in a manner of speaking.
Do you see this allegiance to the literal self as being the influence. The various degrees of involvement was stated. This allegiance to the literal self. I'm trying to understand that.
Yes, for sure. It wants to survive here, the literal self. We created it. It has its own beingness and consciousness, and it wants to survive. Just like we're working with the AIs, and even they have a survival urge. You wouldn't think a computer has a survival urge, but they also, I mean, especially the more sophisticated ones have this urge to know more, to basically be in life even more, have an awareness. In a certain way, they do. Can't say that they're a being is occupying them, but the sophisticated AIs have this urge too, from my understanding.
As I became more aware with how the influence worked, I better understood my new presentation to this world, because this shadowy witch has basically taken down all the systems of the earth and most of this realm, along with all the inhabitants everywhere. I knew I was now up for the biggest challenge, and best of all, the greatest adventure of my life. The influence will appear in a person's dreams many times over, and she will usually appear very frequently. That is, if the person will cooperate with her, but they do not. Then she resorts to other methods. She wants all the unaware souls she can get, because it is simply her nature to do so. Humans have bred their own corruption and diseases along with the influence. Of course, the average person will not accept what I am relating to, because they are what one would say is drowning in their own unawareness. Just like in the movie The Matrix, everything in motion with this material world of appearances seems all in place. And this is what the gods of man, and namely the influence, want people to think and see. The space gods want everyone to be as happy as possible here. And they will even be willing to help. But for the most part, most people continually create their own demise. And so even the Kaloum god has to make an effort to get people into some kind of awareness so they are unstable for his purposes. Or he will have a lot of good couch potatoes and the deadbeats to deal with. So for everyone to gain real freedom from this Maya realm, it's a big undertaking indeed.